Welcome to the Journey of Growth podcast, episode 37. I'm ThE, the host of this event, which is created so myself and others can share perspective on it in hopes that one another's journeys will be relatable, establishes awareness, and inspires listeners to adopt and maintain such behavior. The definition of growth is the process of developing new skills, attitudes, actions, or reactions that can have a beneficial impact on your life and increases your overall well-being. Today, I had a guest scheduled to join the show, yet due to some unexpected circumstances, he did not have an opportunity to be in attendance, which I can relate to. I hope that he will be able to address the situation when provided with the appropriate opportunity, and hopefully we can reschedule the event. And so, due to the circumstance, I do have a alternative theme that I present in when such scenarios occur. And so today I will be presenting once again a segment that I call the Into the Unknown experience, where I will share a testimony of a time when I chose to initiate venturing into an unknown experience and how that experience enhanced my self-identity, grew my self-identity, as well as enhanced my perspective of the outer world. And so if hopefully this experience will be relatable to those, and it could be resourceful for those who are also interested in the experience as well. If you are listening on Instagram, if you could post in the comment section if my sound level is okay or not, I would appreciate that. It seems like I'm sounding okay, but if you think I should increase the volume, please do post that in the comment section. Otherwise, I will continue on with the testimony. And if you like to comment and ask questions, you're invited to do so as well. If you're on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, I'm able to see those comments, and I will also share those comments on the screen as well. So I'm going to begin with a experience that happened about 5 years ago when I chose to venture to the island of the Dominican Republic with a couple of friends, my friend Charles, Rich, and one of Charles's friends who we went to college with, whose name is Will. And Will is from New York. And so I was fortunate to be able to afford to take a trip to the Dominican Republic Um, I think that was the first time I ventured out of California, and I think I was about mid 30s, 35 years old. Um, and so we took an airplane from San Francisco International Airport, and from San Francisco International Airport to Punta Cana, the Dominican Republic, was a 9-hour flight. And we took, I think it was, we had a layover in Miami. And I think when we arrived in Miami, it was about 11 a.m. in the morning. I was only there, the layover was probably about an hour. And I was able to look outside of the windows and see Miami for the first time. And it inspired me and motivated me to want to hopefully experience Miami at some point in the future, or somewhere in Florida, because as I mentioned in a similar segment, when I went to New Orleans, that was that was the second time that I was able to experience some dense humidity, which is what I prefer in terms of a weather condition. But from what I understand, compared to uh, Louisiana, Miami has a higher precipitation rate of humidity, and so in Santo Domingo, I'm sorry, not Santo Domingo, in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, it was also humid, um, and I would say that New Orleans seemed to be more humid than it was in Punta Cana. Um, and let's see, we booked our travels through a website called it was called Cheaper Caribbean. And if you're unaware of Cheaper Caribbean and you're considering venturing to the Caribbean islands, I highly recommend booking through them. They have bundle packages, and we did some cost comparisons to other travel agencies like Expedia, Travelocity, and it seems that Cheaper Caribbean had the more affordable rate, which we settled on. Um, it I think for I think we stayed there for 10 days. For 10 days at our all inclusive adults only resort was about between I think it was about $1,500 to $2,000, but that included also food, um, all you can eat food. So I think just based on the fact that we were staying there for 7 days and we could eat as much food as we want, I think we actually we spent less than what we potentially save more than what we spent. Um, and the resort we stayed at, it was called the Punta Cana Princess Resort, which is also another place that I recommend, because I think when it comes to travel resorts, not all travel resorts um, provide adults only uh, experiences. And that was the first time I experienced an adult only uh, uh, resort as well. They it was actually so the property was pretty massive. A certain section of the area they did have a family area, but what I appreciated about the adults only area is that it was when it comes to like your hotel room, there is no like whining or crying that you're hearing like in the surrounding rooms on the sides and below you. So that was peaceful. And I think my intention when I go on vacation is to relax and not be not experiencing chaos. So um, we took the flight landed in, what was it called? The airport in Punta Cana was called. it was just called Punta Cana International Airport. And so we had to, and that was the first time I saw a alcoholic beverage that I did not know existed, or a variation of it that I did not know existed that is common in the United States, which was Hennessy, but their variant was a white Hennessy. So I think that was pretty interesting. I was like, well, and I asked my friend, why don't in the United States, white Hennessy is not available compared to like a brown Hennessy. And I think it's a matter of increasing the demand for the supply of the white Hennessy, and also the possibility of increasing the price for it because of the demand. But I don't drink, but I just thought that was a interesting observation that I experienced when I was in the Dominican Republic. Um, and so like when we went out of the airport, the travel company cheapercaribbean.com had booked us a uh, a, a van that took us from the airport to the Punta Cana Princess Resort, and this was the first time I was able to witness the locals. And when it came to the locals, a lot of them, the majority of them, were like not dark complexion, but more of a lighter complexion. I would say a lot of them were about my complexion, and that could be due to um, the multicultural um, what's the word, relationships that occurred over generations between I think it was the Spanish and maybe the Portuguese, with as well as the Africans who were in the island. And and when it comes to the men, a lot of the men, a large percentage of men, they seem to resemble Tiger Woods, which I thought was interesting. What I mean by that is like the shape of their eyes were like an almond shape, similar to Tiger Woods, and I got the impression as well. Some of the locals um, thought that I was a Dominican, and I speak Spanish too to a degree. I can speak beginner level Spanish, so some of them were trying to talk to me, and I was like, hablo español poquito. But for the most part, they were very friendly, and yeah, I enjoy talking to them, and I'm intentional about engaging with strangers, especially when I'm on vacation, because when I go on vacation, I like to enhance my interpersonal intelligence, which is people skills. And in order to achieve that, one has to be willing to initiate talking to someone or interacting with someone. Without the initiation, there could be no development of a skill. So I did talk to the people, and what I got the impression, one of the major um, impressions that I got, especially when talking to the women, they seemed they were very friendly, and it was also to the point where women were actually saying hello to me, and I think I experienced a culture shock when talking to the Dominican women, because maybe some people can relate to me when I say this, but sometimes when interacting with American women, they seem to have like premature preconceptions of men, as if a man is if a man engages in or initiates a conversation with them, that the intention for it is to get their phone number or to court them to become their partner or mate, which seems to uh, like deter women from like establishing eye contact or wanting to like put up their phone when a man is walking in their vicinity, or even if I, there's been times when I said hello to a woman, they'd be like, "Oh, I already have a boyfriend." I'm like, "That's not why I am saying hello to you. I'm simply saying hello to you because I'm being respectful and acknowledging you." But it was different when it came to being in the Dominican Republic. They were very receptive and interactive, and also took the initiative to say hello to me before I even had a chance to say hello to them. And what I took from that is that when it comes to certain women being like kind of like, what's the word, just like premature in their behavior, and um um kind of like being mean, and without even giving a person a chance to like present themselves accordingly. Those types of behaviors, when I contrasted some American women to the women in the Dominican Republic, it's a choice. Like, I thought inherently all women behave the way that some American women behave, in terms of just like being mean and like one like intentionally avoiding disengagement with men. So that was a culture shock for me. I'm like, wow, like, because like as a teenager, I imagined that if a woman is physically, quote unquote, model-esque and beautiful, they also have to be mean. And so like going to the DR, I was like, oh yeah, you could be both. You could be nice and you can also be beautiful at the same time. It's, or have this model-esque features at the same time. So yeah, and so I appreciated that, and it was very interesting. So moving on, what else do I want to talk about? Um, there was also, the food was amazing. They had different restaurants on the site. Like, you could go to, like, it was over like 7 different types of restaurants that had various types of cuisines. There was a breakfast restaurant, Italian. They had a fondue restaurant as well. And if you don't know what fondue is, it's like, you dip various foods in cheese or chocolate. And they had a restaurant dedicated exclusively for fondue. And I think that was the first time I experienced fondue as well, maybe the second. Um, what else happened? They had a nightclub that you could go to. I think it stayed open like all day. Um, Chinese food restaurant. The weather was amazing every day. It was warm, 24 hours a day, humid, which was what I was looking for. Um, they did have mosquitoes, but it wasn't like, they weren't swarming. But what's interesting about the mosquitoes in the Dominican Republic compared to like the United States, they're small, to the point where I didn't even see them, but I did see the mosquito bites on my leg. And I brought with me some insect repellent, but it wasn't effective when I was in the Dominican Republic. And you could even buy it on the property. They had a gift shop. And I was like, what's the point of buying this if it's not going to be effective? So I took the initiative to talk to some of the um, locals, and I was like, I know you guys deal with the mosquitoes. If I'm dealing with the mosquitoes, so what would be the solution to the problem? And they told me like what they do is that they put coconut oil rather than the spray on mosquito repellent to repel the mosquitoes. And I was like, oh wow, I learned something new from you. I didn't know coconut oil is a natural mosquito repellent. So I think I didn't buy any. that time because it wasn't available then when I was on the island, but I did use that information and applied it to when I went on a camping trip about a year later with some guys. And so I bought some coconut oil and I put it on and it actually worked. So uh, highly recommend using coconut oil as an alternative. It lasts long. Excuse me. It lasts longer than the mosquito repellent that you spray on. So I thought that was I appreciated that. Um, what else? We we went on a some excursions, which was also it was separate, but there were people who were walking around the resorts promoting various packages, and it was affordable. I think we did about 4 different excursions. We did the ATV on the beach. Um, and what I learned from that experience, if you're ever considering doing ATV on an island, especially if it's on the beach, bring with you a handkerchief because the sand and stuff, especially if you're with a group of people and someone is ahead of you, the sand is kicking back directly on your face, and you're breathing all that sand in. It's getting in your eyes, and they don't, or at least there they didn't provide us with any protection from like the elements. So I was like, that wasn't a fun experience because I was just unprepared for that one. But uh, to see the various different plants and trees as we were going through the terrain was enjoyable. So I do appreciate that part of the ATV. And secondly, we went on horseback riding. I think that was the first time I rode horses. And um, we, in addition to the 3 guys that I was with, we went as a collective with some other people who are also on the resort. And one of the things they told us before we got on the horses, they said, if you ride the horses, please do not take out your phone to take pictures while riding the horses because they can startle the horses when you like snap your phone. So they were clear and transparent about that with us as we started to ride the horses. And apparently, one of the people who was ahead of us chose to change the way she was behaving in terms of like acknowledging what was said, and chose to go the course of conceiving in her head like what is okay versus what really is. So she chose to take out her phone and take a picture, and what resulted in that was the horse bucked and it jumped up to the point where she was thrown off of the saddle, and she hit her head, and it just like coincidentally there was a stone that was coming coming out of the ground, and she ended up hitting her head and like gashing her head on a stone as a result of her decision to not follow instructions, and that caused a delay for the excursion for several minutes. But I think she was okay. They had to call in a paramedic, and where we were, the ambulance wasn't in near distance, so she had to experience some brief trauma of not knowing if they were going to come or not. But fortunately, they did, and they had to take her to a hospital. And I don't know what happened afterwards, but lesson from that: follow don't ignore indications. But the horseback riding was fun. Um, and once again, to see like the landscape and uh, go to somewhere that I'd never been before on the riding on the back of a horse was enjoyable. We did zip lining through the forest. That was the first time I did that. Um, and it took it was a decent amount of time. We did various lines. It was more than just one line that we rode. So that was about an hour and a half experience. And then finally we went to a it's called a coffee plantation where they grow coffee beans as well as cacao beans. And I think cacao beans are um, where I'm not sure if cacao and coca are the same bean. I know coca beans are used for making chocolate, and I think uh, it, I think it tastes. I mean, they taste about similar because they at the end of the plantation tour, we're able to sample coffee, freshly made organic coffee, as well as the coffee beans. Chocolate. And I'm not a coffee drinker, but I decided to drink the coffee because it was available. But in retrospect, I probably should not have ignored my intuition and realizing why I chose not to drink coffee in the first place, because I'm sensitive to caffeine, and it makes me very angsty. I think I drank about 4 cups of it, but it was very flavorful. But I think about 20 minutes after I had drank it, I was like just jittery and couldn't stand still. And my friends were like, "Are you good?" I was like, "Nah, I'm not good right now." um, and what else? Interesting fact about the Dominican Republic: they don't have snakes on the island. Um, and this is something that someone told me, and I was like, "Oh wow, I didn't know that the Dominican Republic didn't have snakes." Especially, it's a forested area, so I'm not sure like what the history of that is. I don't think they were exterminated or killed by the people there. I think it's just a matter of um, just nature not providing the opportunities for these types of animals to inhabit this island. Also, what I learned too is that Haiti and the Dominican Republic is the same island. I was unaware that Haiti and the Dominican Republic were incorporated. I thought they were two different entities, but um, yeah, what separates Haiti from the Dominican Republic is an imaginary line, and apparently they have to have some sort of um, what's it called, border security, because you don't see many Haitians in the Dominican Republic. And I think that's intentional. I think they prevent them from coming to that side. There were a couple of Haitians that were on the resort, and one of the Dominicans told me that the dark complexion Haitians, they have some of them have a complexion. What's the word? A when you They have like low self esteem because of their complexion, because apparently like they are talked about or teased due to their dark pigmentation. And the person had also told me that if you see a Haitian in the Dominican Republic, they're likely, if they have dark complexion, you'll likely see them wearing long sleeve shirts. And the reason why they wear long sleeve shirts is so that um, their arms won't become tanned, and it also could result in their arms becoming their skin color becoming paler due to lack of exposure to the sun. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And I think some days later I did see a Haitian woman that was on the resort, and she was wearing a long sleeve shirt. So that was concerning. I'm like, especially because when I think about the Dominicans, who are or a lot of them have African ancestry, and they are brown complexion, why it's interesting how they will discriminate against the Haitians who also are of African heritage, but their complexion is, maybe to a degree darker. And it's like, well, you're gonna make fun of them even though like you have the same ancestry. Like, how does that work? That's kind of weird to me, I didn't experience any racism there, so I think if it is racism, it's more passive aggressive rather than overt racism. Um, and I talked to my friends and I told them like, I appreciate the opportunity to stay on the resort, but I would also, if possible, would like to venture outside of the resort to have some authentic cultural experience with the people who are not working, and being of service to us as a result of us paying to be at the resort. So I talked to another staff member and asked them where they would recommend we go to to talk to people who are not employees, and they told us that we should go to a local beach where the natives tend to like to hang out, and that was called a place called Boca Chica, Dominican Republic. And so, in order for us to get there, we had to rent a car. So we drove out off of the resort. We were given a ride off of the resort by some of the drivers who drive the vans, and we went to, I think, an Enterprise and was able to rent a car for a day. We all pitched in and paid for a day rental. And so we drove. Not only did we drive to Boca Chica, but we also decided to drive to the capital, which is the Dominican. It's called Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, and that was about a 2 hour and 40 minute drive from Punta Cana. And Boca Chica is in between those two destinations. So we drove during the day. We left early because we were aware of what the drive would be. So we left about 9 a.m. and used GPS to get to Boca Chica, which was a coastal town. And when we got there, the buildings were in fairly good condition. A lot of people on the island ride motorcycles and bikes more so than driving cars, and that could just be to their economic status and how affordable vehicles are in general on the island. It was to the point where we saw a family on on a motorcycle. It was like the mom was riding behind the dad who was driving, and there was a kid sitting on the handlebars, and the mom was had another child like sitting on her sitting like on her lap, and I was like, wow, that don't seem safe. But they made it work though. Um, but when we arrived to Boca Chica, what we discovered, we were trying to find a place to park, and there were a group of men who were, I guess, they were posing as valet drivers, but the streets were public parking. And so what they were doing is they were they would try to direct us to an obvious like parking location, and if we took that part, what they would try to do is like ask for a tip. And we were like, bro, we're not paying you no tip because we were able to do this for ourselves. And but before we even like had that conversation, like some of the guys started arguing amongst each other, talking to, like, I couldn't understand what they were saying in Spanish, but it's, if I were to imagine what they were saying, he was probably saying like, I called the location before you did, like, how are you trying to like get the tip before me? And like the other dude was like, well, you had your chance the other time, it's my chance to get some tips or something like that. And so it started to get hostile. So we decided just to like continue on and hopefully find an alternative place to park, which we did. And So where we decided to stop at was it was like a vacant lot, and it was on the side of a building. And at the time, no one was like occupying the lot. It was just like dirt, but it had a driveway. So we drove up and parked there. And in front of the vacant lot was the beach, which the person at the resort was telling us about. So we were happy to get to that location. And when we got to the sand, there were beach chairs and a umbrella tables, and we sat down to relax. And it was very crowded on the beach. There were a lot of people wanting to sell us stuff. Like there were people trying to sell us old um, phone chargers that were outdated. And so like we really didn't have a chance to relax because there was a lot of people just trying to sell their items. And then suddenly another person came and approached us with a menu. And I was like, at the time we looking around, I was like, there's no restaurant around here. Like, where you get that menu from? And he said, hey, like if you want to get something to eat, like you can look at the menu, and I can go back to the restaurant and find you, get you your food and bring it back to you. And we're like, nah, we're okay. Especially like I said, we didn't see any restaurants in the vicinity. So like we wasn't sure if they were going to try to scam us or do something like that. So we were just viewing interactions and other people talking for the most part that were the locals who weren't working. They were just trying to the kids and stuff were playing in the water. So then we decided to leave and make our way to Santo Domingo. But before we left the parking lot, that same guy who was trying to get us to buy food, like stopped us as we were driving out of the parking lot. And at the time, Will was the driver. I was in the back seat, and he was like, "Hey," he said, how you gonna park in this parking lot and not pay me for you having your car here?" And like Will was like, nobody was here when we pulled into the driveway. How would we have known that this is a private parking lot? And the dude didn't even look like he was a part of a business. It looked like he was trying to like pressure us to pay him for an area that was open to the public. Like the locals weren't being taxed or approached about paying. And Will's from New York, so he was starting to get agitated, and he was wanting to argue with the man. I'm like, Will, bro, you don't even need to argue, bro. Just pull off. And because, like I said, those other dudes who were like acting as valet drivers, they were like down the block. So I'm like, we don't want to like have a confrontation with them, and we're out of our safe space. So let's just pull off. And he, what else could he do? So he decided that he was just, he took my advice and stopped arguing with the dude. And we were able to get out of there with no complications, fortunately. And so we get back on the freeway, and similar to where I'm from in the Bay Area, when you're on the freeway, there's a freeway divider that divides one flow of traffic from the next, ongoing. I mean, if there's traffic going northbound and there's traffic going southbound, and there's a divider that prevents collisions. And so they had these dividers in the Dominican Republic to get from point A to point B. But what they don't have is overpasses, so that if a person is trying to get from one side of the road over to the next, you could walk over an overpass here in the Bay Area. And so what we discovered, what we noticed and observed was the locals, what they would do, they would sit on, like they would walk into the street during like time when there's traffic on the freeway, they will walk like run across when there's a break in traffic and sit on the freeway divider and wait until like there's another break in traffic to run across the freeway to get to the other side. And it was kids that was doing that too. And that was very alarming. I'm like, wow, that is not safe. And I guess apparently the government, like, they seem not to care if people get hit by cars, because if they didn't, like, I think they would have like developed some overpasses so people don't have to run across the freeway to get from one side of town to the next. So that was eye opening and concerning. Um, and when we arrived into the Dominican Republic, I mean, not Dominican Republic, when we arrived to the capital, Santo Domingo, going back to the freeway dividers, compared to Boca Chica, where the freeway dividers were solid, in Santo Domingo, you started to see breaks in the freeway dividers, like someone like broke out sections of it, and we were wondering like why are we seeing all these breaks in the freeway dividers? And soon enough, we discovered why that was. And so like when I was talking about how a lot of people ride motorcycles out there due to the economy, the people who were, let's say, if you were driving northbound on the freeway, some of the people who are driving southbound on motorcycles, what they would do is they would come through the breaks in the freeway dividers to cut through to get to the other side of the road while they're traveling southbound. And like it was a point where Will like almost had a collision with one of these people on the motorcycles, because they just like suddenly like came through the freeway divider and started like gassing their motorcycle to get to the other side. I was like, wow, this is intense. But it got even better than that, because when we got into downtown, the downtown Santo Domingo, where there's cars and people, the traffic lights were not working. Most of the traffic lights were not working, and so what we experienced was, when you came to an intersection where you had cars going north to south and east to west, people trying to cross the street while these cars are trying to get through the intersection, it was pretty much just stop and go, because there were no traffic lights. And so it was intense. And I think when we got there, it was during business hours too. After business hours, people were trying to go home and get back to where they were living. So Will had to it was like playing double dutch. He had to hope for the best in terms of like going through that intersection and hopefully not colliding with anyone, another car, or people trying to like run through the cars to get to the other side of the intersection. That was wild. And I don't think I would have been able to, at that time, I don't think I would have been able to navigate that experience driving the car. But I think fortunately, due to his experience driving in New York, he had that skill set to get through there safely without harming or crashing into anyone. There was also buses. It was intense. And so when we got there, we ate and we went to a mall. The mall, when it comes to to the ethnicities, the majority of the people there were very, very light complexion. So I said earlier that the majority of Dominicans were of brown complexion like myself. But if you go into the mall, they look more European. And I was curious to know like why that was. Maybe it's because they have access to more financial means than the brown and also darker Dominicans. We didn't buy anything. Like a lot of the stuff was very cliche stuff that you could buy from the U.S. But it was interesting to go in there. we ate a native dish. It was something called mofongo. Mofongo is mashed plantain, like mashed potatoes, and they mix it with garlic and rice. It's like a ball. It wasn't very flavorful. I think I can't say all food there was a lax seasoning, but what we tried there, what didn't have that much seasoning. Um, but maybe some people enjoy less seasoning. I prefer more seasoning. More seasoning, the better for me. Um, and we went to a nightclub. The nightclub was not. I mean, it was all right. It was mostly like Latin music and but I like Latin music. I like one of the local. I mean, one genre that derived from the Dominican Republic is called dembo. That's spelled DEMBO, and that is a fast, up pace Latin music. It's very dance friendly. And I also discovered when it comes to uh, Latin music history, merengue derives from the Dominican Republic, which I was unaware of as well. Um, I I like, and also when it comes to when the Dominicans talk, they tend to talk at a slower pace, and it's interesting when people talk. Depending on where you are, there's people who talk fast and slow. I think compared to like Puerto Ricans and Cubans, Dominicans speak slower. So since I speak some Spanish, I was able to understand them more than some of the other tourists who were from Cuba and Puerto Rico. They were a little bit too fast for me. I couldn't keep up. Um, what else? What else did I take from that experience? They have a local drink. It's called Mamawana. And to describe how that is, it is a red drink, like it's reddish in appearance. And I think the reason why it's red is because they put so what it is, it's a combination of local leaves that come from trees and shrubs. I think they also put cinnamon sticks and various other sticks within the beverage to flavor it, and they mix it with rum. I didn't drink any. I think my friend Charles said he drank some, and he said it takes a long time to like feel the effects of being intoxicated. And had he known that before he consumed a large amount, he wouldn't have drank so much. I don't know. I think like flavor wise, I think he was neutral about it. But yeah, he said, beware if you choose to drink the mamajuana, like don't drink it in large quantities because you're not gonna feel the effects later. I mean, you'll feel the effects later than sooner. Mm, we didn't experience like a lot of poverty there in the Dominican Republic. Also, the people there, like I was wondering, like if there is like if the majority of people there are low income people, like what keeps them uh, humble and what keeps them not like doing crimes, because we didn't see much crimes. Apparently there are gangs there, but we didn't experience a lot of we didn't experience any gang activity. So like I said, most of the people are friendly and seem to be happy with their current like living. And so I was just wondering, like, if you are in low income situations, like what keeps y'all going? And so what I discovered is that though, if you buy a house in the Dominican Republic, they don't pay property taxes. So I think that might help the situation if you are not making a lot of money. At least you have a roof over your head and you don't have to worry about paying property taxes annually if you don't have the money. Um, um, what else? Oh, so then when we left, oh, and then there was also a colonial quarters in the Capitol. It looks similar to the French Quarter in terms of the architecture. It looks like a lot of brick buildings and narrow streets. And I think it was designed during the time when there was only horseback riding, so it was hard to, you could drive a car through there. I think also the cars were driven on the left side, if I'm not correct. Yeah, and so you could drive, and a lot of the cars were smaller. They weren't big cars. So we drove through the, I forget the name of it. I want to say it's not the, maybe it's the Spanish Quarter. I'm just gonna call it the Spanish Quarter. We drove through the Spanish Quarter of the capital city, and it wasn't too much going on there other than it was a good place to take photography. We left the capital about 7 or 8 p.m. because at that time it was starting to get dark, and we don't know like how the police enforcement are in terms of interacting with people who are driving at night. So we just didn't want to take a chance of being out there too late. And so we started to head back to Punta Cana. And as we're on the freeway, we drove into a cloud of dense, what's the word, burning plastic. It was to the point where like our windows were rolled up, but the smoke was still like infiltrating the vehicle. And it was kind of worrisome. It was worrisome and almost, frightening, because we wasn't sure how long we were going to be subjected to this on the freeway. And the fact of the matter is we had to be on the freeway in order to get back home, get back to our hotel rooms. Fortunately, it didn't last that long. It was probably we were subjected to it for about 5 or 10 minutes. And so the reason why we went through that cloud of burning rubber and trash is that they don't have a efficient sanitation system in the Dominican Republic. They don't. I don't think I saw one garbage truck come to pick up trash either. So apparently, what they do to deal with trash is that they burn it at nighttime. So, and that's what caused the trash to the smoke to affect us the way it did. But we arrived there unharmed, and I don't think we had any interactions or we didn't have any interactions with the police. And but there were police there, especially when we were in downtown at the mall, and they're not like your average armed security guard, like with a handheld pistol. Like they had rifles, AR-15s, walking around and standing outside the storefront. So I don't know if that's because of the gang activity or it's just a precautionary measure, but that was the first time I saw some. It wasn't even police; there were security guards with AR-15s, but they weren't threatening. They were just there, so they didn't have any issues with them. So I think overall, I'm glad I decided to venture into another unknown experience, which was the Dominican Republic. And I think how it enhanced my identity, it helped me to realize that I am the importance of being appreciative of what I have and the blessings that I have living in the United States. And it also helps me to not be discouraged when interacting with people who don't reciprocate in a way that I hope for. Because, even if I experience a high volume of like disengaging or avoidance type of behaviors from people, that doesn't mean that everyone is that way. And um, I shouldn't stop being me because other people choose to behave that way. It's possible that you may experience the reflections of you elsewhere than your current surroundings. And if you hope to be now, and I'm a proponent of the concept of become what you hope to experience. So if you hope to experience kindness and friendliness and um, supportiveness, it seems that I have I as an individual need to initiate that first. Because if I'm expecting the opposite, meaning that if I expect someone to do that to me first, in order for me to do for myself, then I think that might be it may be delusional thinking, just to be frank and honest. So, and I think I feel good about doing what I appreciate and enjoy, and which I become, and hopefully through my actions I can experience the reflections of that through other people as well. So I hope you enjoyed this venture into the unknown experience with me. I'm going to move on to the next section. If you like to post any comments or questions regarding that, I'll. Sorry about that. Got disconnected. Okay, we back in there. Actually, pressed the wrong button. Okay. So yeah, if you have any comments or questions, please do. You're invited to chime in. We're gonna move on to the next segment, and for those who are just tuning in, I had a featured guest who had an unexpected situation that he had to address, and so instead of he and I growing together as two individuals, I am growing solo in the journey of growth podcast, and hopefully he'll be able to address that situation, and the journey continues. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here with you and share and grow, and hopefully I'm able to inspire growth in you as well. But we're going to move on to the next section. So this section is called the multiple intelligence theory. For those who are unaware of what it is, when it comes to intellect, there are two popular theories. One is more popular than the other. The more popular theory suggests when it comes to individuals, we possess three forms of intellect, which would be mathematical, um, writing, linguistic, and when I say linguistic, I'm also paraphrasing writing skills. So there's uh, writing skills slash linguistic, math skills slash logical, and naturalistic slash scientific. And this theory suggests that these are the only three intelligences we have as individuals. Yet there's an alternative theory that suggests that in addition to those three intellects, there's six additional intellects that an individual can develop and maintain. And the reason why I present this on the podcast is because it's possible that an individual who have may have low degrees in math, science, and writing, but have high degrees in intellects that they are unaware of, such as existential, meaning spiritual, interpersonal slash people smart, bodily kinesthetic slash body smart, intrapersonal slash self smart, and spatial slash I'm not going to say slash because I don't have a paraphrase for that, but to describe spatial intelligence, it's the ability to interact and engage with the outer world. So someone who is an architect, interior designer, someone who is efficient in home design, construction, measurements of objects. They would have degrees of a degree of intellect when it comes to spatial intelligence. And so I present this so that people can be inspired and be motivated to continue to grow their intellects, which can be done and achieved through practice and repetition, similar to an athlete committing to um, practicing a sport. The, in theory, and the more you initiate and then in the engagement, the higher degree of your skill set it will become. Um, and so I usually have a conversation with the guest on the show and ask them what their high degrees of intellect are of the nine multiple intelligences. But since Jake is absent, I guess I could revisit my intellects that I sense are of high degrees. For me, I would say musical intelligence. I do have a high degree in that I sense, and that's just due to my engagement of writing lyrics as well as performing on stage. I recently performed at an I recently performed at an open mic in Jack London Square, which is located in Oakland, California, last night. And um, I think in order to be efficient in a performance, it requires you to listen. If you have an instrumental, it requires you to listen to the tempo of the music so that you can stay on beat when it comes to you performing your vocals. And that's due to me, which I'm able to do. And that's due to me being at home. When I'm at home prior to a show for several days, I will practice at home while I'm listening to the instrumental, and it helps me to stay on cue because sometimes there has been times where I was out of touch with the music, and it just I wasn't happy with like the result of that. So I choose to stay in maintenance of practicing before I perform at a show. What else? I think I do have a high degree of existential intelligence, which I call spiritual intelligence. And I think that's due to me being prayerful, and which takes an initiative. And I think the more, I pray based based out of experiences that I see or observe that I sense through physical engagement will not achieve a result, I choose an alternative course of action, which is to pray. Like one of my friends talked about a weight issue. I can't make that person lose weight, but what I can do is, talk to them and hopefully inspire them. But if you don't see results based on the advice given to them, what can one do? One can pray and hope that the universe or God will intervene in their way of method and hopefully inspire that person to achieve what they're trying to achieve, which in this instance will be weight loss. And so, without prayer, I think being prayerful or being aware of energy that is unseen but you can sense it, one's intellect in the existential uh, aspect probably will not become enhanced from my perspective. I'll do one more. Let's see. I I'll say this too. When it comes to developing skill, at least for me, I do so unconditionally. I think to optimize your intellects, one has to be unconditional in their acts. And what I mean by that is not putting an expectation on why you're doing it. For example, with the interpersonal intelligence, meaning people smart, I have to be willing to initiate having or interacting with someone without the condition that they will interact with me. So, and that starts from within. In my mind, if someone is walking by me and I say like, "Oh, I want to get better at talking to people," but I'm only going to talk to this person if they say hello to me first. Then I'll start to interact with them. That may not be a realistic strategy to do that if you're able to take the initiative yourself. If you take the initiative yourself, I feel like that would be an unconditional act, especially if you've never talked to that person before. And so, they may not talk to you back. They may not be responsive to your initiation of talking to them, but they may. But the benefit from that is you did take the initiative, and so I think even so you're not at a loss. So and you learn from that experience, and I think you also develop that skill as a result of taking that first step. Okay, so I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna go to the next section, which is the interpreting expression section. Cool. All right. So in this section, I present an expression that can be in the form of a statement or it could be a question. And I present it so that because it's relatable to myself and I share my interpretation of it, which um, it's no right or wrong to it, but it's just based on how I relate to the statement in hopes that other people can find the expression relatable as well. So today's and hopefully the expression and the interpretation will be resourceful to the listener, and they can use that um, as a tool for their growth as individuals, as I have used it for myself. And so today's interpreting expressions quote is: "A person connected to purpose does not panic; they pivot." And so, how I'm going to respond to that is one, I'm going to say how this statement how I interpret it, and how relatable is the statement to myself. So, I interpret this as a person who is connected. I would say the word connected and the word supported can be used interchangeably in this statement. So a person who is supported um, in their actions uh, doesn't panic. They just simply make an adjustment to whatever they're experiencing in the present. So for example, today, Jake unexpectedly told me that he was unable to be a part of the show, though I had promoted the show on social media to be consist of both me and him. Um, he chose not to be a part of the show for understandable reasons. And at that point, due to him disengaging, I could have took the path of panicking and of thinking like, oh, you know, what could happen as a result of him not being a part of the show. But I did not choose to take that path. I chose to make a pivot and make an adjustment, which was to present a segment known as journeying into the unknown, and share a experience with me, which can be done as an individual or by myself. And since this show was since I had the opportunity to present this segment on the show, the opportunity in itself for me indicates that the universe or God is supporting this broadcast, because if it wasn't, I wouldn't be here or having this opportunity to do so now. It's my responsibility to not panic, and when presented with a surprise or unexpectancy in terms of my growth, I sense that the universe is supporting me in my growth, and I sense that it would be of detriment for me to stop growing or can stop the pattern of growth. So, um, so alternatively, rather than stop my growth in growing myself in this experience known as a podcast, I simply chose to make an adjustment or pivot. And so, um, I think both that's my interpretation, and I think also that's how this quote is relatable to myself. Um, I think I think that another way that is I think another way that this quote is relatable to myself is that I've had conversations with some other friends, and we talked about how an individual can base their actions out of two ways. They can base their actions two ways. You can base your actions on conceptualization, or you could base your actions on actualization. And actualization are occurrences that are happening outside of your mind, and they would occur whether or not you chose to conceptualize. A conceptualization is something that one can willfully involuntarily create in their head, and can be irrelevant to what's actually happening outside of their minds. For example, a friend of mine told me that he had several parking tickets. Those parking tickets, him experiencing parking tickets on his car, on his vehicle, is an actualization. And at that point, he has a choice to base his actions off of an actualization or a conceptualization. And apparently, and so if you conceptualize in your head, I'm not gonna pay these parking tickets because I don't have the money to pay for them, or I'm not gonna pay these parking tickets because they have no right to give me these parking tickets, though there is a sign directly in front of my vehicle saying no parking. So you choose not to pay the parking tickets as a result of this conceptualization that you voluntarily create. And what can result to that is what can result from that decision and that action is you attracting more actualizations that could be detrimental to you, such as you losing your license, or you having an increase of your premium on your car insurance due to the DMV reporting you not paying these parking tickets. And at some point in time, you can you're going to have to make a pivot and decide, are you going to choose to um, choose to not acknowledge the actualizations? Are you going to change and choose to base your actions off actuality and say, like, I see this, it's my responsibility to engage in this actuality, so let me take the proper actions that are not based out of conceptualization, and start doing things um, and engaging in the world in a way that helps me to solve this problem, which would be, maybe you might have to get another job temporarily so you can get earn some extra income. But if you do that, rather than just staying home and telling yourself, like, I'm not going to pay this bill, I'm not going to pay these parking note, like, if someone comes to your door and arrests you, but you telling them, like, oh, I think I'm not supposed to pay this, you're thinking you're not supposed to pay that is irrelevant to you about to go to jail, which is an actuality. So I would say I'm trying to be intentional of not basing my actions off of actualizations. I mean, I'm trying to base my actions not based on conceptualizations. I'm trying to be aware of what's actually happening and basing my actions on the present and what I'm experiencing in the present. I think if you choose that method, all will be well in your life. But sometimes, especially, I think expectations derive from conceptualizations. I expect him to read my mind. Therefore, I'm not going to tell him, like, what I am hoping that he does. Well, I mean, that's you're basing your action off of conceptualization, and then that can create a rift in the relationship if there is no pivot or change in your awareness of what this person is doing, right? So this is my interpretation of: a person connected to purpose does not panic, they pivot. So moving on, I have reached the end of the Journey of Growth podcast, episode 37. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I hope that this experience was resourceful to everyone. I appreciate you all. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. And I will see you on the next episode. Yeah. Keep swimming. Thank you. Good night.